Okay, so we have a running cluster set up by MMS Automation, and what we're going to do here is a pretty common little bit of administrative work that you tend to have to do. Automation, although it does give you by default MMS statistics, sets all that up. You have a monitoring agent, you're going to start getting statistics from it. You will have to occasionally do some work to get additional statistics, things like that in here. And what I'm also going to take you through here is how you actually go about physically connecting to these boxes outside of MongoDB, right, with SSH. All the information that you need is contained in the MMS interface, but it can be a little bit hard to find if you've never done it before. So we're going to start, let me just explode this for a second. We're going to start in the deployment tab. Okay, so I'm just going to collapse that down, make it a bit easier to read things. So here's EduCluster, or Education Cluster, and here's EduCluster 0, which is our shard 1. I'm going to do this for just one host, but you could rinse and repeat this, you could automate this, you could use some provisioning to do this yourself, and eventually automation should take care of this for you. But right now, I'm going to use this little bit of admin work that will hopefully be automated in the future to illustrate how to connect and how to do things on these individual hosts. So I'll pick the primary here. EduCluster 2 will be the host that we'll be dealing with here. Just click on it. And as you can see here, it does indeed have statistics. I'm just going to zoom out so you can actually see them. So it does have statistics, op counters, non-map virtual memory, all the usual suspects that you'd expect with MMS are available to you here by default, and I've started gathering back here when we actually did the provisioning. Not a lot of data here yet, but what we will notice is if we go into this hardware tab, there's no data in here. And in fact, what we have is a little prompt telling us, not seeing any hardware data, you must be running the latest version of the monitoring agent, which we are, and have the Munin agent, Munin node, installed on your host, or Munin node, whichever way you prefer to pronounce it. So that's what we're going to do. We're actually going to get Munin node installed here so that data can start being collected by the monitoring agent, and we'll have our hardware stats, CPU and I/O, actually populated here. All right, so the first question is, how do I connect to my instance? Well, first of all, we go into the administration tab, and we scroll down into AWS settings, and here you'll see that there's an SSH key for the user account. This is what we're going to be using to connect, and I'll show you where to find the instructions now in just a second. You don't have to remember the host names or anything like that. There is a nice handy quick reference for that. But the first thing you're going to need is this private key. This is what you're going to need right here. This private key is what's going to be needed to actually make the connection. So we hit download. Are you sure? We say yes. And because this key will give you essentially root access to the instance by default, we want to be very careful about who's actually able to download it and get it. And this is, after all, the key that the automation agents and the initial setup was using to do its work. So this is what's being used to connect over SSH when it's doing all of that. And two-factor verification, therefore, is required before you're allowed to download this key. Now, I've actually already done this, but if I hadn't, I'd be getting my Google Authenticator app out here, getting my 6-digit code, entering it here, hitting verify, and doing the download. But I've already taken care of that, so we don't have to do that again. So here's my mms_key.pem file, and I've put it into the .ssh directory. This is just my own personal preference. It's where you will get SSH keys if you generate them yourself for your own particular account. So I tend to keep them all in here by default. And ms_key.pem is in here, and I've already changed the permissions to 400. So they have to be very restricted permissions or it won't actually allow you to use them. So that's an interesting one. Now, how do we actually figure out how to connect? Let's pop back into the MMS interface here for a second. We'll go to the servers view, and we know that we're looking for EduCluster 2, right? That was the primary that we were going to enable hardware stats. So let's find that in the list. 0, 1, and 2, here it is. You can see what's running on it, you can see some extra information about it, what zone it's in, what image it's using, etc. If we hit connect here, see we've got the instructions from scratch about how to actually go about connecting. First, you need ms_key.pem, but we already know that. I've already taken care of changing the permissions, and I've put it in the .ssh directory. Here's the host name that you're going to be connecting to, EduCluster 2. This dynamic host name provided to you as part of the automation service, a nice little handy feature. So if the IP address or something like that changes when the instance is rebooted, this host name will still continue to work. And this is just a dynamic DNS implementation provided as part of the automation process, a nice handy little shortcut. And then down here we have the actual command, right? So you have to run SSH, you have to specify, that's what this -i is, to use this key to authenticate as this user on this host name. Okay, so we're literally just going to take that in the .ssh directory, so I don't have to do any munging of the path or anything like that. And there we go. So I've just SSH'd in using that exact command. You can see it up here at the top. And I've gotten into our Ubuntu 14.04. And as you can see, I'm now logged in as mms-user at educluster-2. Perfect. So this is the one that we want to do the work on. I know from previous experience that what you actually want to do first is install this package called systat. So sudo apt-get install systat. What does that get you? Well, it gets you iostat for one thing. And if you install it beforehand, when you install Munin Node, which we're about to do, it will pick up the fact that iostat is there, and it will add the iostat plugins to the list. If you don't, you're going to have to do that part manually. So I always recommend installing systat first, then doing Munin Node later. It's not that it can't be done, it just makes everything a little bit more convenient. Okay, so we have iostat installed. Let's just really quickly verify that. Yes, indeed we do. Excellent. So, to install Munin Node, it's pretty straightforward, very similar to how we just installed systat. And if you're using the Amazon Linux version of this, then it's very, very similar. It'll just be yum install and the equivalent package name in the Red Hat style repo. I'll say yes to that. So Munin Node should now actually be installed. We can do a quick check. I happen to know that the port for Munin Node off the top of my head is 4949, so let's telnet to that. And if we do a list command, we can see all of the things that it's actually showing us at the moment. Actually, iostat's not there, so I'm going to have to fix it anyway. So systat has installed iostat, but the iostat plugin has not been linked for Munin Node. And let's do a fetch on CPU just to show you that you can do this manually yourself. This is what the monitoring agent is going to be doing when it's graphing at CPU. So you can see it gives you, user, nice, system, idle, etc., IO wait, and all that sort of thing. And they're just incrementing counters that it needs to keep track of and then use to create graphs. Okay, great. So I'm going to cd into the plugins directory, and this is how you go about figuring out which plugins are enabled and where they point at. So you can see that the ones that are actually there right now are all just symbolic links. That's what this arrow here means. So the swap plugin that's currently being used points at user share Munin plugins swap. And there's no entry here for iostats, right? So that's what we need to fix. Not hard to do. As you can see, we've got iostat and iostat underscore ios. We're going to link both of those. And that's what this does. Sudo lnss to the particular file will create a symbolic link to that file in the current directory. So let's do that. And let's do it for the underscore ios. Double check. If we scroll up now, we should have our iostat pieces in there. Yes, they are. There they are. Excellent. That's kind of working as expected. To get Munin to actually pick up that, we have to restart the Munin Node service, so let's do that. And now, if we telnet in on port 4949, we should have some new stats listed. Indeed, there it is. Iostat, iostat underscore ios. And we can just fetch iostat and show you what that currently looks like. There it is. So again, very similar. This is what will be recording, checking for diffs in, and then graphing out for you in MMS. The one final part that we actually have to do here is if we take a quick look at the Munin Node config, which is in the etc directory. It's munin-node.conf in the etc Munin directory. So let's go in there, have a quick look. Again, experience here. I've done this many times. So I know that down here there is an allow statement. And what the allow statement says is allow IP addresses that match this regular expression, which is what this is. It's a regular expression, to connect and get stats. Now that worked for us because we were telnetting in from the local host. Okay, so we were hitting this loopback address 127.0.0.1. However, if the monitoring agent is not running on this host, it won't be coming from 127.0.0.1, so it won't be able to connect and get hardware stats. What we have to do is we have to change that to our IP address, or if we are confident that we are running in a trusted environment, which in this case I am, I locked down the security group here, so I know that this will work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to be just star. In other words, allow connections from anywhere to Munin Node. Now, if you're not running in a trusted environment, I certainly would not recommend this. And by the way, this second allow statement is for IPv6, which doesn't apply here. We're not using it. Wouldn't recommend this in a non-trusted environment. Wouldn't recommend this unless you've got your security groups nicely locked down. What you should do in that case is find out the actual IP addresses of your monitoring agents and place them in here, right? So that is the recommended best practice for convenience here. And because I know that I've locked down the security group, I'm going to just set it to anything. Okay, so now that you've altered the config, the last thing that you need to do is one more Munin Node restart. There we go. And that should be all that we need to do to enable that hardware tab in that host. So you can imagine if you're doing that on one host, if you're doing it on two hosts, you could do it manually. It's not a big deal. If you're going to do it on 50 or 100, you're going to want to automate that process. And eventually we'll have that option in MMS automation as well, I'm sure, just further down the road. But for now, it is a little bit manual. But the nice thing about this process is it gives you that overview of how that you actually go about connecting, making sort of some manual changes and tweaks to those instances, all based off of the information that's available here in the MMS UI. So let's go back to our deployment. Let's go to EduCluster 2, the one that we've just been working on. So we come back to EduCluster -2, the one that we've just been doing the work on. Here we are now in the hardware tab, and as you can see, we now have CPU time information just starting to be collected after we made those changes to the m202 node. Daemon added it, made the changes so the relevant agent could connect and actually gather statistics, and we're starting to get the reporting here over on the right hand side of the graph. Similarly, IO stat is now coming in for the various configured devices. XVDA, XVDF, those are all sort of standard graphs on an Amazon instance. These are the device names that you're going to see. And that will just, continue to be populated over time, and eventually we'll have, the usual multi-week views, early granularity, etc., etc. So there you go. There is how to set up m202 node, how to connect to and administer an instance running in AWS provisioned with MMS automation manually, and do some tweaking to the actual host itself.